rolling. Welcome back. Is this first time, second time, third
Second time.
Yeah, second time. I knew that. Today we're doing things a little different.
We are.
We're going to turn the tables and you're asking me questions.
I know, it's exciting.
I kind of know what some of them are, or did and forgot. So we're winging this.
Perfect.
Do you want to, so I'll preface it. You had come to me and you had suggested doing this. Mm-hmm. I think the majority of the questions are going to be based on adventure teams, adventure bike club, what we do and why we do it the way we do it. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you explain in your words, why do you think we need to do this? Why is it important? And then we can get going.
Sure. So I think the premise is we do talk about a lot of these things. We talk about them all year long, but we present a lot of these things at Leadership Summit. However, the number of people that have the ability to attend Leadership Summit out of all of our coaches is a relatively small percentage. So between the rest of our coaches and parents and anybody else who might be interested in why we do the things we do, most specifically for Adventure Team, but also the ethos statements are not just specific to Adventure Team, right? Anyway, this gives people an opportunity to hear what everybody else gets to hear at Summit.
Okay, that's fair. So I should preface on the front end that, this has been an evolution of an organization and a youth program and events for 11 years. And our plan right now is to make sure it's here for another 11 years and then 11 years after that. When this was created, I did not sit down and look at what everybody else is doing to figure out what we were going to do. And I think it's important for people to hear that because they need to understand that this has been intentionally designed based on my gut, based on what I think is lacking for kids and for adults, and sometimes based on just how I think we should treat each other and behave and what the rules should be. They may not mesh or match what the rest of the world's doing. And to be honest, over the course of the last 11 years, the contrast between what we do and what a lot of other people do has increased. So with that, I'll just say it's the same way in the events. We clearly communicate. Here's what we do. Here's why we do it. Here's how we do it. And if you don't like it, we're okay with that. We're not one of these groups or people who try to remove things that don't like us or are different from us. I think having things that are different from us is good. The same goes for the youth program. We don't get as many questions now as we did the first couple of years.
Right.
Because it's well established. But even with the youth program, we tell you what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And if you don't like it, I have openly told parents for 11 years, there's a lot of other groups out there for you. We're not going to change because you think we should do it a different way. It's not meant disrespectfully. I always listen to input. If somebody comes up with something that I think is legit and actually fits, we'll do it. So I think it's important to say that up front because we're going to talk through all these different things. I'm going to explain the importance of it or how it came to be or why we do it. And these are not put out for debate. This is to just explain. If you want to know the deeper intention and reasons, we're going to tell you. Mm-hmm. If you want to argue about it, there's a wall over there. That's not what I'm here to do.
Right. And I think these are the things that probably do most often come up as questions.
Yeah.
The topics that we're going to talk about today,
sure,
or are most dissimilar from other teams that youth or parents participate in.
Yeah. And I would say they're also, because I think one of them is going to be the shirt.
Right.
Right. So I think some of the things you're going to ask about that we really hold firm on are things that adults routinely let go and make excuses for, which is part of the whole underlying problem that's much deeper than we'll get into today, but that's all part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to make a rule and set a rule, you should have a rule. Kids should have to aspire to some level of responsibility and accountability beginning at a young age. And the only way they're going to do that is if they're surrounded by adults who do the same and expect the same. You know, if you're raised by a group of adults that are constantly making exceptions for you, saying, well, you don't need to have that shirt today. It's okay. I know you're busy. Well, pretty soon, the rule's not the rule anymore.
You want to start there? You want to start with why do we all wear?
Well, sure. Yeah, well.
Why do we all have?
So let's talk about the adventure team shirt.
Okay. And there are 13 communities at this point. So also,
Yes.
the more people that join the organization, the more communities that join the organization,
Yep.
potentially, the more possibility there is for people to not understand
Yeah,
why
for sure.
we do the things we do.
For sure. So, you know, originally, I'm going to pair the nameplate
Shirt
with
nameplate,
the shirt because they're tied together. So when we started the program, you know, I'm looking at this thinking ahead, okay, I'm going to have 50 kids. We're going into the woods in multiple groups. I need a way to know what kids are with us and what kids are not fast, right? Because when you're in the woods and you're adventuring and you're on trails, there's a possibility that a kid could start to get away from you, be on the edge. You could get kids mixed in with you that don't belong with you. You need a way visually to assess the situation quickly. So really the nameplates and the shirts, the consistency of the nameplate and the shirt was so that I and every volunteer would know from a risk management standpoint who's with us and who isn't, right? Quick. I don't need, if they're just wearing whatever willy-nilly shirt they want to bring from home and there's no nameplate and you're in a public space, it's going to be pretty damn hard to quickly determine who's with you and who's not. So that was, originally it was really a risk management piece. I'd call it a safety piece. Now, as we've grown, because keep in mind, at this time we were just in Marquette. This is 8 years ago. Well, now we start to grow and we go to Escanaba, Delta County. We go to Gogebic County. And then at some point we end up in Wisconsin. And then we end up below the bridge, Lower Michigan. Now the nameplate and the shirt starts to take on added meaning, added value. Because what we say is 13 communities, one team. So this shirt that we wear in Marquette is now worn on all adventure teams across all teams in the Midwest and maybe hopefully someday across the country, showing solidarity, showing unity. To me, that's a big part of what the shirt says is I'm going to take some things about me, I'm going to take my ego and I'm going to push it down to be part of this. And to be part of something bigger than yourself, you have to be willing to do that. Now, all too often in the world we're living in right now, those people who want to be part of something bigger than themselves actually want that to be about them, so they come in and try to make it serve them. Right? Mm-hmm. Self-serving. They're coming in to take. That's not our deal. So there's some sacrifice. I'll be upfront. If you're going to be part of the 906 Adventure Team, if you're going to do our events, if you're going to be a volunteer and you're going to work with kids and you're going to be a area lead for an adventure team, you're going to sacrifice. So, you know, for the kids, if you take it to the youth level, I think we have to stop making excuses for kids to not do stuff. If you're on a football team, a baseball team, a hockey team, whatever, you have to wear a uniform when you go to the game. Why should you not have to wear a shirt that shows you're part of this team on bike club night? That's a responsibility of the child. This is the parent's opportunity to start to show some responsibility, right? I mean, I'm sure you deal with this in school with the kids. Mm-hmm. And we have to resist the urge to make I'm busy the reason that we don't do things that are important. From a public perspective, here at Tourist, we're in a very public place, highly visible. It's next to a campground that people are coming in and out of all summer. The other thing that, the consistency on the shirt and the nameplate do is it shows a well-run, well-organized organization to the public, and it gives parents the confidence they can leave their kids with us and they're safe. Meaning, mountain biking is inherently dangerous. Everything we do is inherently dangerous. I don't want to misguide anybody on that. There's danger involved in riding bikes in the woods or running. But what I mean by safe is they are bringing their kids to an organization that understands process and detail. And I've been told for as long as I've been doing this program, this youth program, is not one of the best, the best run youth program their kids ever been part of. So there you go. That's shirts and nameplates.
And we have made some accommodations over the years to make it so you don't have a shirt or you don't have a nameplate, you don't ride, but we also have made it so that there is the ability, if you're really in a bind, we'll help you out.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time internally. Rules are important. Structure is important. I think Bike Club actually helps show kids structure is important. And I think that the adults, our volunteers and parents value the structure because the structured nature of our program reduces anxiety and stress. It makes things more predictable, But there will be cases, and this is occurring more, where a child is living in a split home. And we identified this, I think, 2 years ago. It might have been around when Mark came in. Like, we need to have a solution for these situations for kids where maybe for whatever reason, one parent never remembers to send them with the shirt or actually flat out says, I'm not sending the shirt, because they're going to turn that into some sort of combative piece between them and their partner. So now we have shirts as backup. Kid shows up without a shirt. If we know that child is living within a circumstance that's a little bit challenging for him or her, we're going to compensate for that, right? Mm-hmm. It's the right thing to do. If a kid shows up without a shirt, we're going to get him a shirt. If he comes again next week and he doesn't have a shirt, well, now there's going to be a conversation. Because again, if we let him continue to do it, now we're not making exceptions, we're changing the rule.
Right.
Right. So I'd say as much as we have rules and we believe in structure, we also understand we are working with people. We're working with some special situations, and we flex around that stuff.
And we want kids to ride. We want kids to participate.
Yeah, I don't want a kid to go home because he doesn't have a shirt.
Right.
So now every year we invest in surplus inventory of shirts so that every team has them. Yeah, there you go. And I'll say this because I'm hoping that some of our area leads watch this. Next year, when we start doing site visits, you don't want to be the community that has been lax on this and is letting people get away with it, because you will be called out. You can put yourself on notice right now.
and you will be called out.
Absolutely.
You said something about less anxiety for people who show up, youth and really leads who show up, or youth and coaches, and it's structured, right? So can you talk some about base camp setup? Because that's another very organizationally intentional, right, process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have the benefit of having worked in service my entire life. So my first job was fast food. My second job was retail, and I spent many years in that, working up through the ranks. Eventually, got up, in the level of store manager. You're serving the public. You're providing guest service. So you learn a lot about people through that. And then I go to Cisco, and I'm working in the hospitality industry. Again, we're providing a service. We're a distributor. We're a vendor. I'm in working with restaurant owners, trying not only to sell them food, but to help their restaurant operate at a higher level and be more profitable because their family depends on it. So everything I've done has always been about service. And through that, you learn a lot about people. And what you learn is people do better. They operate at a higher level and they get along better when you provide structure and rules. And you make things easy to figure out. You know, I am sensitive to the fact that a lot of parents are under a lot of pressure every day with work. You know, just the societal pressure that is on a family today is significant. So I don't want dropping their kids off at bike club to be one of the most stressful things they have to do all day. So we were very intentional in the beginning in laying it out in a very deliberate way. So I said from day one, we're going to have a way that this thing gets set up in a space that we can set up in. And from day one, when we set this base camp up, it is set up identically, exactly the same way. Every single bike club, every single night. And it has been that way at Tourist Park since we went to Tourist Park in 2018. It's really never changed except it got bigger. So people come in on orientation night. We give them the opportunity, not feeling stressed out that their kids are going to get thrown into the woods right away or that there's a ride. You know, that's why orientation has been put in place too. This is a walkthrough. Now, for people who, I was not in the military, but I read a lot of military books and content. Maybe I should have been in the military. But for people who don't know this, you know, the military, before they're going to carry out an operation, they'll go through 6 months to a year of planning, training, walking through, actually doing the operation before they actually do it. So that when they go to do it, they've already done it. It's the same thing for sports teams. That's what you practice for. That's why you scrimmage. Orientation, that's our walkthrough. Mm-hmm. That's our practice. That's a chance to come in a low-stress environment and get a lay of the land and know from that night forward, it's going to be set up this way every single time. When you look at base camp from 100 yards away, it's very easy to see. You know, for us, there's like 15 stations. You can see from 100 yards away, every station is numbered, and it's in a predictable pattern. It's just organized, you know. I think anybody who stands back and looks at ours from afar, they naturally are drawn up to ask some questions because they're like, wow, what is this? I'm sure you've seen it all summer.
Every night.
Yeah, every night.
Every night.
What's going on here?
From the campground comes over every night.
Yeah.
And wants to know what's going on.
Yeah. And generally, like when I've been there, maybe this is different for Mark this year, but generally somebody will come up and be like, oh, what's going on? You guys having a race? And I love that intro because it's like, no, actually, all of this is not about racing. And then you can kind of get into, describing it. But yeah, I mean, I think that the base camp format and setup is a big part of our success. You know, I think when you want some things to be predictable. And I think dropping your kids off should be. It should be organized, under control, predictable.
Well, even the kids, so many kids have some sort of anxiety, right, about new situations. So
for sure.
They know every week.
For sure.
Where is my team located? Where, I can find a cone. Yep. I know to start with ABCD bike check.
Yep.
All of that.
Yep. And you take the format, it has been, now duplicated and replicated across 13, 14 communities, whatever it is. It has repeatedly worked everywhere it's gone. It repeatedly gets the same feedback. It's a great equation. And, not surprising, I mentioned I was in food service. Well, a big part of food service for national chains is franchising. And how do you franchise? Like, how do you go get a Big Mac in Marquette and then go to California and get the same Big Mac? It's because they have processes in place. So it's not an accident that a lot of what we do, when people start to get in and they see the systems that we provide, they're like, oh, well, looks like a franchise.
You do something else, or we do something else interesting. I think that I work with kids in summer camps and kids programs, right? So check in and check out is always a thing. No one wants to lose a kid. No
Right.
one wants to have a kid dropped off and not be able to provide that child at the end of the day for the
Yeah.
parent. So but you do something else different at Bike Club, the intentional drop off and pickup.
Yeah.
Whereas many other organizations might just do some sort of check in and check out, which means you don't really know who you gave the kid to necessarily once you check them out.
Yeah.
But at Bike Club, we know.
Yeah, there's an intentional exchange of custody that's mandatory. So when the parents show up, they need to bring the child to the station and make eye contact so it's clear, like, okay, I'm here. Ashley's with you. I'll see you at 8, right? Deliberate, intentional, memorable. And we know who dropped Ashley off. And then when it's time to pick up, the parent has to come back and get Ashley. Again, because, okay, you're taking Ashley. Great. It was a good ride. Hey, by the way, just so you know, she had a little incident last night or tonight. Scraped up her leg. You might want to keep an eye on it, wash it out, blah, blah, blah. That's why you need to also have that back end, that communication. But it also is just, I think it's important to maintain that touch point, that contact. Again, we're a service organization and we are working with people and you've got to have a connection. I think that the minimal investment of your time and energy that it takes, even just to also from the parents or the grandparents' standpoint, whoever's picking the child up, just to acknowledge, like, hey, thanks for taking my kid into the woods. Thanks for the opportunity. See you next week. Those little things, while you might think that they're meaningless or not that impactful, I think for a volunteer means a lot.
Yeah. And it gives the parents an opportunity to engage.
Yes.
After.
Right.
Ask some questions.
Okay, I'm going to skip around now, mostly because I won't be able to keep track of where I am on my list otherwise. Be on time.
Be on time. I shouldn't have to explain why this is important.
But be on time doesn't mean
Well,
show up at.
Yeah, for us, being on time means you need to be there 10 minutes early. And, that's just always been, that is an example of a rule that is just a rule I picked. If your idea of be on time is something else, good for you. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you about it, I think actually Gail and I have talked about it in the past. Gail thinks being on time means if our meeting's at 6, I'm going to get there at 6. Okay, great. But what I would argue is if my meeting is beginning at 6 and I get there 10 minutes early, I can get there, I can get my laptop out, I can get it fired up, I can get pulled up, whatever I need to have up. I can turn off my phone. I can go to the bathroom if I need to. Like, I get all of this stuff that doesn't need to be part of the meeting done. Instead of rolling in at 6 and then taking 5 minutes to get ready, right? Now, at Bike Club, being on time is important every step of the way. So parents need to understand, I'm just going to keep basing this off Marquette. We have 130 kids that show up per night. I'm going to say there's approximately 45 volunteers that show up per night. That's a lot of people just for Bike Club. We have 2 hours to execute the mission. Okay, I'm going to go back to the military for a minute. The mission is to get kids in the woods, to practice bike skills, to focus on their character development skill. We have 2 hours. We have to be hard and fast on the expectations of time. I know that there are some parents out there that would love it if we'd make exceptions and hear their excuses about why they're late. And I'm not saying that the excuses aren't even valid. But what I'm saying is the rule's the rule. We have 200 people that have to get into the woods and they have a mission. You need to be on time. If you roll in at 6:10, your kid's going home. That's just the way it is. If you're a lead out there and you're not following this, when we start doing site visits next year, we're going to call you out.
Well, I was going to say even coaches, right? Like if you,
For sure.
I mean, we're holding a coaches meeting at 5:45.
Yes.
And if you're not there, you're missing something.
Yes.
And then your riders start rolling in and they're expecting to do ABCD bike check. And if you're really not there by 6 p.m., now as a lead, I'm scrambling to figure out
Yep.
what am I doing so I have enough coaches.
Yep.
And not wondering, excuse me, who I'm, who's sitting back and who's not being able to ride.
All of these concessions that people ask us to make and all these excuses that they may think are good reasons, those are all selfishly driven. They're putting themselves and their issues first. And that's why it doesn't fit with us. Because it's just like, listen, I get it. Life's busy. It's hard. There's a lot going on. Stuff happens. You don't expect it to happen. If you're constantly leaving no room for error in your life, again, this goes back to the 10 minutes early thing. If I have a 10-minute buffer and 6 meetings a day, I have 60 minutes of buffer in my day for shit to go wrong. People just don't think about that. Versus somebody who's got it like to the minute, you got no room for anything to go wrong, brother. Right? So I'm going to be honest. It's not convenient all the time. Go back. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to put other people first. You're going to have to put the kids at first. You're going to have to put what the organization's trying to accomplish first and get your ass there on time. And once you do it, it feels good. It does.
Yeah, right.
Now, the same thing holds true. Okay. We focused on just getting the kids to bike club. You brought up the coaches. Coaches got to be on time because we need to get in the woods on time. Well, why do we need to get in the woods on time? Because the kids came to adventure. And we got parents coming at 8 o'clock to get them. And there is nothing that chaps my butt. I almost swore. More than a group showing up a half hour late.
Yeah.
And now I got 10 kids' parents
Sitting around waiting.
sitting in base camp waiting. It looks bad. It erodes trust. It makes us look like we don't know what we're doing and we don't have control. That's unacceptable. I don't care. This is one thing I could say that short of an injury, it is absolutely unacceptable to ever be late. You need to be in control of time and understanding what you're doing as a coach. Those parents deserve, if our parents are checking the box and getting those kids there on time, we have a commitment to them to do the same. But again, it's all about each of us putting somebody else first at some point in that evening to make sure it's an optimal experience for everybody and the kids have a good time.
Let's see.
Can I stop you for a sec?
Yes.
I want to go back because I want to make sure that I say this. We talked about base camp, and I'm afraid we may not come back to it. If there's one thing that this is just a personal tick. I don't know why, but in cycling in particular, and I'm saying this as having come from traditional sports. I've played on baseball teams. I've played on football teams, so I played organized sports, basketball, baseball, football. When you go to a 2-hour practice for one of those athletic pastimes, those practices are very structured from beginning to end. Organized and structured, hard. When I started coming into the cycling world, what I noticed, particularly on any youth program, it's the Wild West. There's no organization. Everybody treats it like it's a party. Doesn't seem to be any deeper, more intentional intent. A lot of people that don't want to take anything serious. I'm just here to have fun. And they're missing the biggest opportunity for the kids. But beyond that, beyond what can be learned in what we were trying to do at Bike Club, I don't want my kids going to a program that looks like chaos.
Right.
Because what we are telling kids without saying it is, this is okay. It's good. It's okay to not have rules. It's okay if it's completely disorganized. It's okay if people are showing up late. This is very common in the cycling world. It's okay if we don't really know what the hell we're doing tonight. We're just here to have fun. Like, there's nothing serious about this. Meanwhile, every lesson that you're giving to the kids is going right into their memory bank, because, and this is why we are always talking about what you do matters more than what you say. Because kids forget what you say. Kids don't even want to hear you talk, right?
Right.
Our rule of if you've talked for 60 seconds, you've talked too long for adults. It's true. Kids, I got a 14-year-old. I got a 21-year-old. Like, I've been fighting this battle for 21 years. You know, they just don't maintain everything that you say in that moment. But do you think they remember what I do or what I did? You're damn right they do. So, you know, I want to say, if anybody's listening to this and they're running a program that runs amok and it's chaos in the Wild West, just think about the things that you may be teaching that you're not even thinking about, the lessons you're imparting that you might not even realize. Structure matters.
And to that end, some of the things we didn't talk about base camp is if your bike is out, your helmet's on.
Oh, absolutely.
If
Absolutely.
there's no riding your bike in base camp, you're walking it out of base camp.
Yes.
I find
Do we want to talk about
remind the kids of that all the time.
Do we want to talk about why that is?
We can talk about why that is, sure.
So you have to walk your bike in base camp, because that, you know, for us here with 130 kids coming into a space in a 10-minute window where you also have 45 volunteers, there is a good chance that that turns into chaos and injury if the kids are just coming into it on their bike, riding at variable speeds. It just doesn't, it would not, that vibe, again, would start to spike the anxiety. You know, it would not deliver an optimal experience on arrival. So you have to walk your bike in. Now, in 8 years, I can think off the top of my head of one damaged bike and 2 physical injuries, so 3 events that have occurred at our bike club in base camp. And all 3 happened because they weren't following the rules. That is also a big reason why the rules are what they are. There is absolutely no reason to have kids have a mechanical, get a broken bike, or get a brake lever in the eye, just above the eye, not in the eye, above the eye, have to go to the emergency room for stitches. There's no reason to have that happen at base camp when it's all preventable. And as you know, like with any event, any incident that occurs, whether it's wherever it occurs within our program, we are constantly looking at what happens, not to assign blame, but to identify root cause to ensure it doesn't happen again.
I think the other structures that are in place that might not be as visible, maybe. Well, ABCD bike check's visible, and even the very young kids know
They do.
this is what we do, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we do. And now we're learning that this is what we do before every ride, not just at bike club.
Yeah.
And I've had families tell me that, right? So we don't go out for a family ride till everybody does ABCD bike check, right? Because they know that was what happens first
Yeah.
at bike club.
And I really hope, you know, on that point, I'm glad you brought up the ABCD bike check. I hope, because the truth is, if parents don't act as an extension of us, and, you know, if it's only important when they're with us, what's the message there? You know, when they go home, I mean, if mom and dad are like, don't worry about that, that's not a big deal. It's kind of undermining what we're doing. You know, you have such an opportunity where we're setting a foundation for these kids. These things are important. They should be looking at their bikes. When you look at the fact that bike club and our leadership team is, what are we, like 43 to 45% female? What an opportunity for female leaders and participants, kids, to learn how to work on their own bike. It drives me nuts when I see dads taking care of their bike for their daughter because she's a girl. That happens all the time. I think it's super prevalent in the racing world still. When we had a race team, dad, the hero, is coming in working on the bike for his daughter. I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine. But why don't you let her do it herself? Teach her how to do it. So I think that's great that Bike Club has made that such an important part of every single ride all season. And if you're a coach that's not doing that, shame on you.
The part that I was going to say are less visible maybe to the public is that at every one of our communities, we are responsible for the same character skill and the same bike skill each week. And that is conveyed from the leads to all coaches through Stack App. And so also riders see that as we're doing both a bike skill and a character skill each week.
Yep.
Practicing it, talking about it.
Yeah, the program has always been about developing the whole human, not just the bike riding human. We have no aspirations of creating world champion mountain bikers. That's not why we're here. What I would like to create would be just world champion humans, just good people. That's why we emphasize a skill every week and a character attribute, and why we talk about them equally and treat them equally, because for a lot of these kids, cycling is something they can take with them through life. It can be with them forever. Some kids will do it now, move away, and then maybe come back to it later. Everybody's cycling journey will be different. And if they stick with it, great. But also if they don't, that's okay too. Because I think that what we really want the program to do is to instill certain character attributes and fundamentals that can be effective in anything that kids do, right? If you teach a kid to work hard, treat people well, respect others, and finish what they start, just a few of the things that we talk about. If they're taught those basic things, I don't care if they're on a bike team, if they're on a band, if they're in robotics, these lessons matter everywhere you go in the world in life. And the kids need to learn them, the value of them. So that's a big part to Bike Club. I'm glad you brought that up, because every week, the lesson plan goes out. There's a bike skill and there's a character attribute. And it's, there's a manual in the backpack. Well, we can talk about the manual in the backpack because, ideally, we want coaches to be with the same group of kids all summer because we believe deeply in the value of relationships. Right. That also calls into question the 80% attendance, Yeah, we want you there. Let's be honest. There's a lot of kids out there right now in the world that probably feel like they don't have a lot of people in their life they can count on. Bike Club should be a place they can count on those adults showing up for them. That's a fundamental core value, showing up. I don't feel bad about an 80% attendance rate. I'd say for a volunteer who gets miffed about having to be there 80% of the time, I don't think you're there for the right reasons. Like, again, service, you're putting others first. Those kids need you. If we keep putting coaches interchanging the coaches, the kids don't know them. They don't know the kids. They don't know how much the kids have progressed. They don't know what each of the kids still has to work on. That's why we want the same coaches with the same group of kids all summer. But in the event, we do realize there's vacations and we, make concessions for that. So you will have other coaches come in at times. The skill guide is important because if you're going to teach level pedals to my kids when I'm gone on vacation, I want you to talk about level pedals the same way I will, right? And cycling in sports in general is another thing where this is where people let their ego get them. I don't need that manual. I'm going to teach it the way I believe in it. Well, now, if you teach level pedals on a week that I'm gone, I come back, I start teaching level pedals from the book. They might be, well, that's not what Coach Julie said, right? And then it appears like the adults, the leadership's not on the same page.
Well, I think it does two other things. So if I learn about level pedals this year and my coach uses the same language next year,
Yes.
now I already sort of understand what they're talking about,
Yes.
right? Whereas
Yes.
I'm more likely to be confused if you're teaching it to me differently this year than you taught it to me this
Yes.
last year. So
Yes.
I think it does that as well. And then also for coaches who perhaps have less confidence in cycling, and we hear that from volunteers
A
every
lot.
year, right? Like, I
Yes.
don't know if I am a good enough cyclist to actually volunteer and coach kids. And 9 times out of 10, they're just not giving themselves enough credit.
Yep.
But also, if they have the language to teach the skill, then we've removed part of that barrier
Yeah,
to having to figure out what to teach and how to teach it.
absolutely. Yeah, we want consistency. One of the foundational core values, respect, effort, consistency, and grit. Consistency is important. I mean, you do bring up a great point that if there's a kid, and many kids do Adventure Bike Club year on year, so having things taught the same way every year and reinforced is valuable. And it's not as confusing for the kids either.
Right.
Kids are smart. If you put a kid, again, going back into a less organized, less intentional, kind of Wild West environment, they will pick up on adults not being on the same page and kind of being snarky toward one another and being like, Julie doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. This is how you do level pedals. They pick up on that and they don't respect that. And you're also like showing them, because I think that we're really big on that share of leadership between men and women. I mean, with nearly 45% of our, 600 volunteers globally being women, there's a lot of opportunities where men and women are working together and sharing that commitment to leadership, and they're modeling men and women working well together, which is super important, I think, for the girls and the boys.
Maybe we'll come back to that, but that would probably be a whole tangent. I was thinking about a different comment that you said earlier, though, that we're not really training mountain bike racers, right? And so to that end, the way that we organize our teams, our youth groups within a community's
Yep.
team, is very intentional.
Yep.
So, and perhaps different than people might see on competitive youth athletic teams.
Well, for sure.
So
For
you want
sure.
to talk a little bit about the teams?
Yeah, I can talk about how we group the kids. I'll go to 2016 first, when we went and we started racing in Wisconsin with NICA. When I learned about NICA at that time in 16, the Wisconsin League and then the national organization, I read some snippets, some marketing material that they had been putting out, and it seemed to be talking about racing, but the talking points made it seem like it's not about racing. And I'm like, this seems to jive kind of with what we want to do. So let's give it a go. Because we had kids within the organization at that time who were racing, wanted to race. So we go and we become a team, a composite team in the Wisconsin NICA League. And we spend the fall racing over there. I don't know. I think we had 35 kids. We'll call it 35. So what I learned that fall is actually what ended up informing everything we've done since then. We are working with 35 kids, and I learned quickly out of the 35 kids that keep in mind, this is before Adventure Bike Club. So this NICA experience in 2016 is what was the reason we launched Adventure Bike Club. It's the whole reason we created it. We're practicing. We're preparing for races all fall. There's, let's say, 8 kids on the team that are genuinely there for the competitive aspect of racing. And these kids, not only do they want to win, they want to be on the podium. 8 kids. Now we got 27 other kids. And they're there for a wide range of reasons. I think the kids who were with us at that time, while I was the one directing races, will tell you they were some of the hardest practices they probably have ever been through. We ran the kids hard. Well, because we were preparing them for races, right? You're going to compete in Wisconsin against some of the best racing kids in the Midwest, so you got to be ready. We'd race in the rain. We'd race in everything. I remember the first time when it was going to rain and there were going to be storms, and I had parents texting me like, "Is practice canceled?" And I'm like, "Why would it be?" And they said, "Well, it's going to rain." And I said, "And what?" I said, "If it rains on race day, are we staying home?" And they're like, "Well, no." And I said, "Then we need to practice in the rain." Right? At that time, that was not, people didn't think that way. Now all of a sudden, everybody's talking that way. Yeah, we're going to ride in the rain. We're gonna race in the rain, and we're going to practice in the rain. Well, not all kids thrive in that environment. Okay? The 8 kids who wanted to win, they didn't always enjoy it because it was hard, but they benefited from it, and they did well. The other 27 kids felt like every damn ride was a death march, and it wasn't fun. They might have fun at the event. They definitely would have fun with the social aspect of going to the event, but the rest of it wasn't fun. And I came out of it that fall and I said, you know what? This just doesn't work. Because I have kids with 2 different needs. I have kids who do need to be pushed and need to be able to perform at a high level. And I have kids who just want to be riding bikes with other kids. And if they're fast, great. But they don't care if they win. They're not tied to the outcome, the performative side of it. So we created Adventure Bike Club in 2017. And that is what has, ushered that program along. One of the big components, when we still had the race team, what we said was, all right, Adventure Bike Club is going to be for kids 5 to 17. This is a non-competitive program. We are not going to group by skill. We're going to group by age. The point of this program is not performance. It's community building. It's youth development. That's what we're doing. If you have a child, 6th grade and up, and that child wants to race, go on the race team. So we had the 2 options. I know there's a couple of race leagues out there. I think maybe Miska does this in Michigan, where the elementary kids race. Mm-hmm. I've never wanted the cycling experience for kids to be that. I think if you get to middle school, 6th grade, and you've been fundamentally built and given a great foundation of bike skills and character skills, and then you go in and you want to go to the next level and challenge yourself, go crazy. I personally would like youth development to be first and foremost, so that's why we have not done any racing, because it's too hard to keep the best interests of the kid ahead of the interests of the adults or the coaches or the parents. As soon as you bring in competition, everything's skewed. So we had a path for personal competition, Adventure Bike Club, and we had a path for head-to-head competition with the race team. And that's what we did up until a couple years ago. And now we just are all in on the whole human development, you versus you, personal competition, and just trying to develop kids to be successful in life. Whether they're successful in cycling or not, I don't care. They can go do whatever they want to do. I just want to know we did our job and we did something to help get you ready for that.
It's really interesting. This is the first year I saw this come up at our bike club. Or maybe I just didn't pay attention earlier, but youth riders think that just because they were in group 2 this year, they'll be in group 3 next year, right? Like there's some sort of progression to those groups. Yeah. And really, group 1 is the youngest kids for us, and group 7 is the oldest kids for us, right? And then anybody could fall anywhere in between based on the number of youth and the age of the youth that register each year. So you may be in group 2 again next year.
You could be. Yeah, it definitely exists. I haven't heard it as much here, but I have heard that in the past. The one thing I'd say that is a definite separator here in Marquette, because we run 2 days.
Right.
So on Monday, it's always kids that are 5 to 8. And then on Thursday, it's always kids who are 9 to 17. So it is kind of like this graduation of sorts when you go from Monday to Thursday.
But by age, not by skill.
Yeah,
not
it's all by age.
Yeah, right.
100%. But it's still like for the kids, you can see it means something to them. Like, oh, I get to go to Thursday. Yeah, I'm with the big kids now.
Like Thursday's when they know and they made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we've kind of talked about respect in a lot of the ways that we talked about some of the other pieces, the operational pieces. Do you want to say anything more specific about respect and the role it plays?
Respect to me is, and I think that for a lot of times for somebody to come in for some of these rules that we're talking about, okay, some of the things we do, here's how I'll take this with respect. We do things different. And I have not done things different just for the sake of I'm going to be different. Again, gut. What's the best way to do something? If your end result is bringing people together and finding a way to strip away everything that we find to divide ourselves, if that's your goal, and to put them into an environment where they can learn to work together, they can learn to not let these silly things that we let get between us come between us, then people need to come in either to Adventure Bike Club, volunteering for Bike Club, our events, participating in the events, or volunteering for the events. They have to respect our intention, and they got to trust us. And I do think we have earned a lot of people's trust. And I do think that they do respect what we're doing. But respect is an important part of, we respect others by creating the structure we've created. Again, going back to my service journey in life, I've been from every end of every company I've worked for, meaning everything I did, I started at the bottom, the lowest rung you could start. And I've worked toward the top. So I've got to see how things happen on all ends of a company multiple times. And you start to learn how people interact up and down the chain. And you see the disconnects. It really wasn't until that I left Cisco, because I was just below regional management and a vice president of sales when I left. It wasn't until I left and started building this that I started to understand the consequence and the heaviness of some of the decisions that those VPs and presidents have to make sometimes. It's tough. You got a lot of responsibility. And, when you're down a couple of rings or rungs from it, you don't always see the rationale. And also they do have some blind spots that eventually develop over time. And I do think C-level folks more often than not become very disconnected from whatever the reality of their business or organization is. But I'm aware of that, right? So that's a big part of the reason why, while I may be the one making a lot of the organizational decisions that impact everybody every day, I'm also the same guy that'll go down and sweep the trailers out, trying to maintain both ends. I've been the lowest guy, and I've been at the top, and I just feel like you have to understand all sides of it. I think that people, whether they percept it or not, or perceive it or not, I think people resonate with that type of approach within an organization. We respect them, and I think in turn they respect us, and there's trust.
You said, and I've heard you say this before, that a lot of the maybe procedures or operational decisions that you've made have come from your gut. And that may be true and may have been true, but also many of the decisions that you made 10 years ago have played out over 10 years.
They have.
And have worked out.
They have.
So the idea that trust and respect, but also you've done the due diligence along the way.
Yeah. I think it all comes down to what's your intention. My intention has never changed. I said from day one when we started the adventure team, I have been transparent. It was me, one coach, and 5 kids. And all I knew was that there was a gap in our community that existed. There was not an opportunity. At that time, it was more focused on just a cycling team or a way to get into cycling for your average person, for kids. Didn't exist. I've been transparent. I didn't know what I was doing. I did not have an elaborate plan. Everybody who tells you, if you got somebody preaching to you 5-year plans, 10-year plans, I've done nothing. I've got like a 5-minute plan. But I know what my goal is. And that goals never change. And it's to create opportunities for people and to bring people together. Well, if you're going to create opportunity for people and bring people together, now, referencing back to my experience again, what you learn is people have, without the right structures in place, without the right leadership in place, people have a way of complicating and making things harder than it has to be. And all of their personal stuff gets in the way. And it becomes not as good as it could have been. So because I've learned that, I've been able to implement different processes. Rules of engagement is one of my favorite terms I like to use. You learn kind of how you need to do things so that we can continue to bring more and more people together. And look at us today. I mean, one guy, 5 kids, now is 600 volunteers this year, 1,300 kids. If you take our youth program and our events, 13, 17, that's 3,000. We're upwards of 4,000 to 5,000 people a year annually participating in our events, youth and adults. And that does not even begin to scratch the surface of our volunteers, of which there's hundreds, and then extended family and support crews, of which I'm going to say there's thousands.
Right.
And it all started with one guy and 5 kids. We took the chance.
All right. I'm switching gears. I'm going to ask you to talk about leading from behind.
This is a hard one sometimes for adults. It's an important one to me. I know that our image of a leader is that it's kind of glorified. If I'm the leader of group 1, I'm going to get my team together. I'm going to give, a rah-rah speech. I'm going to tell them what the plan is for the day, and I'm going to lead them off to the horizon. And if that's the way I lead, I have no idea what the hell's going on for 2 hours behind me. I don't see a single kid. I don't know what that kid's struggling with. I don't know if we're too far apart. I am missing the biggest opportunity to be a true leader. And that's why I have stressed, since we've got Adventure Bike Club going, leadership is about leading from behind. You should be at the back of the group. If you're actually the leader and you're secure in yourself and your ability, and you don't feel like you have to go every Thursday night to prove to the middle school boys that you can hang, you should be comfortably behind managing your crew of kids and co-coaches, because you're the leader. And a leader should be able to put, again, what they want, their ride, and their ego aside for everybody else to thrive. If I'm at the back of the group, they have radios now. So leader on the back has a radio, leader on the front has a radio. When we started, we had nothing. It's a miracle we didn't lose kids. But they have radios now. If you're a leader back there, you can easily control and manage your group with the push of a button, communicating up to your leader. You can see everything that's happening in front of you, which is important because if you have an incident or an accident, you want to be the one that has put eyes on what happened. If you're up in front and you got 12 people behind you, you don't see shit. You're going to be relying on somebody else now, what they saw. You are the most qualified person if you're leading that group to assess what happened, what you saw. So there's just a lot of reasons to be back there. But if nothing else, generally our leaders should be our more experienced senior, I hate using that term, but it would be leaders who've been doing this multiple years. They've got the experience. And for those people, like I've done this for 11. I created the majority of what we do. I wrote the training, meaning, the training is comprised of everything we've done over 11 years. And still there's nobody that holds themselves to the rules more stringently than me. That is the polar opposite of how things generally work in life. Normally, the more senior person at a company or on a team starts to get afforded some liberties, right? I've been doing this forever. I don't need to do that, right? You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like the longer you do it, you get some status with it. I think that's the other thing it does is it puts our more senior people in a position of serving. You're serving everybody else in the group, even though you are the most senior person in that group. You're at the back. There's just something to it that I think helps inform the rest of our culture that is positive. Otherwise, you end up with all of your experienced leaders on the front, and I think it lends itself more to ego and speed and just the stuff we don't want to be about.
Well, and when we do have youth that are maybe into going faster or
yes,
perhaps not waiting for their teammates as much as they should, we often put them towards the back with the lead in the back and have them work on skills and or being a better teammate.
Yeah, something my dad said to me when I was probably 22. So I had worked with a home improvement chain and got to this point at 21 where if I was going to go on to the fast track for management, I was going to have to start moving to Chicago or some other place out of the UP. And I had this moment where I'm like, man, I'm 21. They want me to move to Chicago. I think I had an offer to go to Naperville. And I kind of there was this little voice inside. It was like, if you go, you're not coming back. Meaning this is going to become my career. And I was like, I don't know that I want to do this the rest of my life. I'm only 21. I got a lot to figure out yet. So I left that job, walked away from it, and I took a job as a part-time truck driver for Cisco. That's where my Cisco career started. And that job I love because you just go pick up your truck in the morning. You got 1,000 cases of food on it. Get that shit off as fast as you can. Go home. Do what you want the rest of the day. It was great. But anyway, I had this conversation one time with my dad because, I'm in a crew of drivers. I'm the least senior. I'm one of the youngest, if not the youngest. Got a bunch of guys that have been doing this forever. And I'm talking to my dad, because I'm looking at the bonus and the cases per man hour, and I'm like, what are these guys doing all day? Why aren't they faster? And I was kind of, 22, talking shit, kind of talking in a way that was pumping myself up because of how fast I was. And he just looked at me and he said, hey, listen, you are one of the fastest, if not the fastest drivers. But a successful company doesn't just need fast drivers. And I sat and I looked at him. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, how often do you stop and talk to the customers? And I'm like, well, I don't do that.
I'm not fast.
it's going to slow me down. My bonus will be lower, right? I perceived that the value of a delivery driver was get that shit off fast. Get people what they need. There were other drivers that they were slower, but their relationships were incredible. And it was a combination of the drivers who were fast and efficient, and a combination of the drivers who held and maintained relationships, because these restaurants would normally get a couple deliveries a week. So the combination of those qualities is what made them value Cisco and the drivers. If every driver had been Todd Poquette, their relationship would not have been as deep, because I ain't talking about nothing. I'm in the door and out. So that really had an impact, I think, on me in a way that I didn't really understand or grasp until I've gotten, 30 years down the road, now nearly 52. And it's a big part of why our groups are age-based, because you know that those groups are going to have kids of a wide range of skills. And I think that the least skilled kid in the group and the most skilled kid in the group are equally valuable to us. And I think all too often, because we are constantly putting the skilled kids above the less skilled kids, that those less skilled kids feel less valuable, and that's not fair. These are kids. What they have to give hasn't even been fully determined or developed. And right away, you start putting kids up on top. When I was down in Lansing this week, during my breakout, one of the things I talked about was the thing that just really rubs me the wrong way right now in high school sports is that they're taking full life-size banners of football players and basketball players, and they're hanging them in their schools. How many kids is that? Maybe 50, 70. How many kids are in the school? 1,000, 1,500, 4,000? You know what I'm saying? Are those 50 kids and 70 kids who are being hung in the rafters and on the walls, are they really what we want every kid in that school to aspire to be? Because that's kind of what we're saying. And I'm going to say, without even knowing all these kids, they're not. We need them not to all aspire to that. Going back to the analogy of me as a driver, right? But that's what we value. I looked around the room and when in the breakout, and I said, I said, how many kids are in your school system down here? And somebody said 40,000. I don't know if that's right. But let's just say it's 20,000 kids going to school in Lansing, Michigan. How crazy is it that every one of these schools has a football team? Let's say it's, I don't know, out of 20,000 kids, let's say there's 1,000 football players. And you can get an entire community to come out and pay money to cheer for those kids in the stands for an entire season of football. But that's only 1,000 kids. What percentage of the 20,000 kids is that? What kind of effort do those people put in to the other 99% of the kids? And the answer is none, or very little. So I think that within our programming, we don't talk about this depth to what we do, or why we're doing it the way we're doing it, or what life experiences have informed it. But this is where it's coming from. This is, in some ways, trying to do things different to create a different reality for people down the road. Something within it must be working, because we're a hell of a lot bigger now than we were 11 years ago.
Absolutely. Parents don't coach their own kids. I see this one play out year after year after year after year. I feel like there almost couldn't be a better decision.
What do you mean you see it play out?
Bike club. I see it where parents agree, right? Like they find a situation at bike club in which they say, yep, it's great that somebody else is currently talking to my child about that. Or it's great that somebody else is getting my child to go out to ride tonight. Or it's great that somebody else is, and I can focus on the other 10 riders that I have in front of me. I think that I've never seen a parent coach who said it should be in reverse, right? Who have argued that partway through the season that they wish they were coaching their own child.
Yeah, well, so there's an occasional, probably 0.001% of parents.
Before the season, people question it. But
yeah,
I don't think, I've not seen it happen during the season.
No. Not once you see it in motion.
Right.
But, what I want to mention the before the season starts piece, because I would say it's super rare, but it does happen, that a parent will come in and kind of push, like, I got to be with my kid. My kid needs me. I would argue that kid out of all the 1,300 kids, more than any of the other 1,299 kids, that kid needs the space more than everybody else from that parent. That is not good for that kid. But so, I mean, here's the thing. 10 out of 10 kids agree. I don't want to ride with my parents. You know, we say that as a joke, but it's also true. And I'm going to say 9.9 parents out of 10 agree. I don't want to ride with my kids. In order, and I understand where it might be hard to have your kid go ride with another adult. But if you're going to make an important decision when they're little, that is the number one decision I think you can make, is to allow them to start sensing, feeling, and creating some independence from you, and be putting them into situations where they can actually have an authentic personal experience. Because if you, mom and dad, are in that group, it's going to change their experience of every ride. It will never be what it could have been. Now, I'll give you another or an example of how another reason why this is in place. So during COVID, we continued to program because we were outdoors, and our format fit perfect within the COVID guidelines, right? 6 foot apart, groups have to be dispersed. Like, it worked. The one thing we had to relax a little bit because of the pandemic was parents not being with their kids because it's different households.
Right.
Right. So we had a situation where a parent ended up in a group with their kid. And then one night, this kid had an accident, a crash. And she was not the leader. She was not the group leader. She was not the most experienced coach. But she went over the top because it was her kid. And it was the exact type of reaction within an incident moment you don't want. Panic, hysteria, just not a good scene. Alienated the other coaches, made a big deal of it. It wasn't even that big of a crash. So that's the other thing that we're aware of, is that parents oftentimes are the least objective in a really, really high stress, significant moment, and may not be the best person to be in the group to handle it. We've never had an issue like that except for that one time where a parent was in a group with their child. Otherwise, when we've had incidents, I think that the coaches handle it very well. But yeah, and we should extend this out. So it isn't just that kids don't ride with parents. We also don't put siblings together.
Right.
And we don't take requests to put kids with friends. Now, a parent might ask, why can't they be with their friends? Well, Bike Club is not about deepening the relationship you already have with existing friends. It's about expanding your social network and creating new friends. So based on that alone, I'd say that's why we wouldn't put them together. I'm not saying that they don't end up randomly in the same group. It happens.
Right.
But it's never intentionally. We've had to, and we will separate groups of friends when their little chemistry and dynamic, if they accidentally end up all together in the same group, we will separate them into other groups if they're disruptive to the group dynamic. So if their relationship is not allowing for a team relationship to form, we'll divide them. And that is the reason why we don't want them together. Mm-hmm. Because we have these kids randomly assigned with coaches and kids, their age, the kids are their age. And there's a lot of value in the development that comes with learning how to navigate a social, experience like that through a summer with people you don't know.
Absolutely. I've heard you talk about also, and going back to the parents and kids, at the end of the night when you go home, you have two experiences to talk about in the car, right? So you get to hear your child's stories that you didn't also live with them throughout the night.
Yes.
And there's some value to that.
100%. You get to be able to ride home from Bike Club and to hear your child tell you about their ride and describe it and explain it. And then you can do the same. it just makes for a completely different experience for both of you. It's deeper. It's more dynamic. I think there's more value in it. You know, I remember a time, I mean, I'll call myself out on this because, I remember a time somehow I ended up in Cable's group years ago, and he was much younger. And he happened to be at the back of the group at this time, and I happened to be leading from behind. So guess whose kid is directly in front of me? My kid. And we were going over by Blue Heron. We're going up the climb. He ended up sliding out, crashing, and he went down on a stump that had been cut off. I didn't handle it well. He was hurt. He was legitimately hurt. I didn't handle it well because he's my kid. There was, in reflection after we got through that moment and on the ride home, I had to come clean and apologize. Like, I'm being honest, like I'm even prone to making mistakes. I'm not like these rules. I think it's important for parents to understand. We're not saying that we're perfect and that we don't make these mistakes. I would argue that I am in a better position to put the stuff in place because I've made these mistakes. I've felt the guilt of mishandling situations. I have felt bad about him not having an experience that he could have had. Like, do you have much to learn from somebody who's gone through life never making a mistake? Absolutely not. I think the people that are willing to take risks and take mistakes can be the best teachers, So any of the stuff people hear us talk about, there's a very deep reason why we're doing it. And there's probably some situation in the past where we feel like a child's experience and potential future experiences were negatively impacted by something we could have reacted better to or in.
That's a good segue into Do Hard Things.
Yeah. That Do Hard Things has been a journey because I've just always embraced this idea. Like, I embraced this idea before people were writing books about it. We've been doing what we've been doing before Michael Easter wrote a book about the comfort crisis, I think is what he wrote. Like, before this became mainstream, we talked about all of these things that we talk about today. Life is inherently hard. I said this in the keynote closing comments this week when I was in Lansing, that we are doing children a disservice by pretending we can make the world safe. And every time that we bring something else up for them to be afraid of, we're shrinking their world. The walls are closing in around them. And I shared some personal experiences, which I won't get into here, but there were some very significant personal things that happened to me through my life with, somebody who tried to take their life, somebody that I loved, a situation with my family, where I have not had communication with my parents in 15, 20 years. These are things you have to understand, and nobody ever talks about with kids. This shit's waiting for you down the road. Heartache, heartbreak is waiting for you. It's going to come knocking in some shape or form, but nobody talks about it. So we're sending kids through school, and we're sending kids into young adulthood and beyond into adulthood with this idea that we're somehow going to make things easier and safer and less dangerous, and we are not. And by telling them that and not preparing them for the harsh realities ahead of them, we're setting them up for failure, disappointment, anxiety, depression. I mean, look at the statistically. I'm not making this up. People can go out, right, read the studies, look at the data. This is where we are. And the whole reason that we are where we are is because people are finding a way to get control of other people through fear. And we're not spending enough time teaching kids how to do hard things. Well, why are we not teaching kids how to do hard things? Because adults are afraid too. And a lot of adults don't want to do hard things. Because if you haven't been doing hard things, the first thing you got to face is you don't do hard things. And that's a tough pill to swallow, right? So listen, I've been talking about it my entire life. It's never been more important than it is now. But I'm gonna say something about hard things that I've rarely talked about. You have to be careful because it can also turn into an addiction. It can become into ego fuel that can become toxic too, right? And I am a person who encourages the doing of hard things. So I've seen where it can get out of hand. It can get out of control. You can end up having people doing things they should not do purely because they think the mantra is, I have to do the hard thing. I'm injured. I'm not 100%, but I need to go do this thing because I do hard things. It's like, no, maybe the hard thing in that scenario is
stepping back.
You step back and you be an adult and you, again, take that ego down a notch and you check yourself. So doing hard things, like anything in life, can be very complicated. Now, that's an exception scenario, okay? I don't want to cloud it. Fundamentally, you should be doing hard things. It should be a regular part of your life. You should be challenging yourself cognitively by learning, reading. You should be challenging yourself physically. It doesn't have to be to win. You don't even have to win in order for that hard thing to be valuable. Just showing up sometimes, and I would argue maybe more valuable, just showing up to do the hard thing for the sake of doing it is super valuable when you're not getting anything from it. When the carrot isn't some sort of status you might obtain from having done it, you go do that hard thing, and at the end of the day, the only thing you get from it is knowing you stuck it out to get it done. That's super valuable. That's powerful. And I think that that's the type of mindset, that 25-hour mindset from Margie. I think that that's what keeps people in the woods for 25 hours at Margie. I think that's what keeps people pushing through the woods at Crusher, trying to get in under 40 hours, or those guys.
Yeah, who came in after
the men and women at Crusher this year. Like, I don't know, what was there, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them. Cutoff is 29 hours. Mm-hmm. They're still out there.
They finished it anyway, yeah.
And they finished it anyway. That's powerful. And I see less and less of that in our world. And more people only doing the hard thing if they're going to get something from it. Or, worse yet, just having the hard thing be something they talk about. Or they do a hard thing, and then all they do is talk about the hard thing they did. Pretty soon, it's a year ago. It's 2 years ago. And it's 4 years ago. Pretty soon, you haven't done a damn hard thing for 10 years because all you're doing is talking about the hard thing you did 10 years ago. Do hard things.
And I just want to summarize, as it pertains to Adventure Team, we think about it as having kids do hard things because at some point in life is going to be hard. So if you practice being a problem solver and you practice having resilience and you practice with your team in a relatively safe environment, then you're set up for future experiences, and it might not set you back as far.
Yeah, we want kids to identify eventually, or to create this identity of someone, of seeing themselves as a person who's capable of working through hard stuff, doing hard things, the general idea of it, so it doesn't become too specific. We have a tendency to make kids a little over-specialized in things. This is a broad term. We want kids to identify as, I can do hard things in any capacity. I am an overcomer of obstacles, right? Problem solve, keep at it, tenacity. That whole idea of there not being a finish line, for me, is the goalpost is always moving in a positive way. I'm working toward this. Like, failure isn't even an option. It's not even on the list. I will just relentlessly plod forward to this. And then I get there and it moves. And I keep moving. And that's been sort of the momentum or methodical plodding along. I say plodding, but that has kept us moving. We have never stagnated. We're constantly changing and evolving, and there's a lack of predictability in the things that I think need to be unpredictable. Whereas I also understand the value of what needs to be predictable. And there's just this rhythmic balance of the whole thing. It's a living organism. It's like, I told somebody recently that called me a race director. I said, I'm not a race director. So what I do and what we do is more of an art.
All right. My next question is a segue from that. And this is a word that gets used, I think, a lot currently, but I don't know that you use it in exactly the same way as we talk about it in general society. So adventure. To go on an adventure, to be a part of an adventure.
Yeah.
To do adventure on a bike.
Well, the worst thing that happened is businesses learned that the word adventure sells. And now everything's an adventure. Yeah. I'm waiting for a U.S. Postal Service ad showing somebody adventuring out to their mailbox to get their stamps. I don't want to say what is and is not an adventure for somebody. So I'm just going to say what I see adventure as and what I see it not as. We went to Wisconsin Dells back in June, I think it was, for the last tournament for the travel team I was coaching. Mm-hmm. And we were at the Kalahari. I haven't been over to the Dells in, I don't know, a decade. And I hope I don't ever go back again. Now, I'm saying that because for some people, that's an adventure. That is not the kind of adventure I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the adventure that travel organizations are trying to sell you. I'm not talking about the adventure that most of society is talking about. Adventure to me, I'm talking about the adventure of life. And I actually said that in Lansing with the teachers, that I opened the keynote with, because their theme was what if? And I opened the keynote with, what if we teach kids to look at life as an adventure? Meaning, let's be honest up front that it's going to be wild and unpredictable, because we know it is. And good things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen. But it'll be okay, because whether it's the good thing or the bad thing, it's part of the adventure. Things going wrong is inherently ingrained into the DNA of every adventure. Think of any adventure story ever written. I'll name Moby Dick. A movie, Lord of the Rings. Can you think of any other adventures? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's an adventure.
Swiss Family Robinson.
Swiss Family Robinson. Right? In all of these adventures, of which there are many, the plot always includes heroes, anti-heroes, good things, bad things, loss, success, danger, happiness, elation, tragic loss, death, rebirth. That's life. That's adventure. That's what I'm saying adventure is. And to tell kids it's anything different is a disservice. I've learned this in 51 years. What could I have accomplished if I didn't have to teach it, or learn it myself? What if I had been taught a little different? It's not what I was taught. I was basically taught, go get a job. You just need to have a job. That's the meaning of life. When I mentioned that I haven't really talked to my family for 15, 20 years. That incident, and I won't go into detail on it, but when we went our separate ways, I was in my mid-30s. And I had this moment that I was set free. Because what I realized is everything I'd been taught, I'm in my mid-30s, and literally everything I've been taught wasn't true. And instead of being overcome by depression, anxiety, and just sorrow, I saw a world of opportunity. And I've just gone after it ever since. It's like the only thing holding me back is what I allow to hold me back, or what I allow other people to do to hold me back. You know, if my reality was that fragile and could be crushed that quickly by one decision a person made that wasn't me, and my life changes, well, fuck that. I'm doing things different. And that's literally what the last 16 years of my life have been. Free. I want every kid to have that.
Which ties in nicely to self-supported ethos.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I think it's easy for people to understand growth mindset and potentially adventure mindset the way you just described it. But oftentimes we still think someone's going to save us out there, whether it's at an event or in bike club or in life.
Yes. So the disclaimer for our events has been the same for 11 years. You are on your own. No one is out there to save you. GPS is required. There will be no course signage, which, you know, for a couple of the events there is. But we tell them there isn't. We also tell them event signs can fall down. Bears can eat them. You know, you're on your own. If there's an emergency, call 911 with an asterisk. And then when you read the asterisk, it is, you may not have cell service when you need it. And that is the bar we've set. And we've said, if you're not willing to accept that level of self-sufficiency, efficiency, and danger, we're okay with it, but you should certainly stay home. If a guy calls me or a woman calls me and they're going on and on about how they can't figure out where packet pickup is,
You're at the wrong event.
my answer is, listen, if you can't find packet pickup without me, you sure as the hell should not do this event. So please stay home. And I say it's a joke, but it's also serious. We're not going to do it for you. There's a huge community of people that have embraced this mindset. And thank God, because we're a minority. But we need to keep working to reach more people with that message. You know, I've said that you're responsible for your preparation and the consequences of your outcomes. That should apply to our events, and it should apply to life. There's too many people out there, businesses, organizations, entities, government agencies, that feel like they need to tell us when it's okay to do this and that. They're telling us what is safe and what is not. They're taking the decision-making from us. When they take the decision-making from us, they're not just taking the decision-making, they're taking our freedom from us, freedom of choice. So anybody listening to this, you just need to understand, like, we're not telling you we're going to put you out there on your own and not save you because we're bad people. We're doing this because if you can rise to that level of preparation and readiness in life, that is freedom. And then when you surround yourself with people who have that same life focus as we do, we're in a community of people who accept personal accountability for themselves and their action, you become a force. And there's less chaos and conflict because we're not all waiting for somebody else to do everything for us. which still right now is the majority of the world. But we're slowly trying to change that. You know, I understand sometimes businesses are doing what they do because they're afraid of liability. Well, I'm sorry if you sign up for Crusher, if you thought that this was going to be easy and not dangerous, like, you are an adult. I am not here to tell you what you can or can't do. And don't blame me if you can't do it. Don't blame me if you get in over your head. There should be more of that.
But even at Adventure Team, we tell the riders, the youth riders, bring your snack, bring your water, bring your EpiPen.
Yep. If you don't have it,
without it, you're not going to ride.
You can't ride.
Wear your shirt, right?
Yep.
I mean, and even our 5-year-olds show up with their snack and their water and closed-toed shoes and their shirt on every week.
And if they don't,
and not because, I mean, yes, I'm sure in part because their parents helped them prepare, but also they know that those are the questions they're going to be asked before they go out and ride.
well, yeah. I mean, the parents are probably helping. They should be helping. You know, with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, all the way up to a 12-year-old or 14-year-old or even a 17-year-old. I don't think that you can have an expectation as a parent that you're going to, they're going to do it all themselves. And I think that a parent who lets their kid show up repeatedly without all the stuff they need and they blame it on the kid, I think they're hitting the easy button for being unaccountable. And I think that's a lazy parent, because you do have to remember these kids are kids. Like, they don't have the cognitive development, mental development of an adult. So it takes time, right, for that to develop. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to forget stuff. That's where we step in, right? I still do it with Cable, and I'll probably be doing it until he's 20. But the frequency of how often you do it, I think, as the kids get older, decreases. But yeah, it should be their responsibility. And the absolute bottom line is, if they show up without something,
they're accountable.
They're accountable, and they can't ride. There was a great story from, God, I can't remember which community it was. I didn't share this one. But there was a great story where in one of the communities, a little girl did not like the grips on her handlebars. So she would, when she wasn't at bike club, she'd take them off when she's at home. So she's riding just with the bare bars. And she was a younger girl, I think 6, maybe 7. She would have to remember to put them back on before bike club. One week, she forgot to. She got to bike club without the grips. And then the coaches were like, if you don't have the grips, you can't ride. And then she looked at her mom. And surprisingly, Mom looked back at her and said, I told you this was going to happen. We're going to have to go home and you have to come back next week. It was textbook. That mom didn't yell at the volunteer about the rules. She backed us up, and she showed the value in being prepared, being responsible. And it was perfect.
Well, the little girl didn't forget her.
She did not forget them again. Well, I had that story. I think you've heard me maybe share it at the Leadership Summit, or I've shared it other times with the travel basketball team with the practice jersey. So we go to the extent of buying practice jerseys for the kids. And, the first night we had all the parents come in, all of the kids, and we go through the code of conduct. And I'm just very upfront about it. We're going to be super transparent about how we're going to run this team. I'm going to tell you what the rules are, and you just need to meet them. And I told them that night, if we get through tonight and this isn't for you, I'm not going to be upset. Don't come back. So we get through that night. Everybody signs the paperwork. Everybody knows practice jerseys are required. If you don't have a practice jersey, you're not practicing. So we get going. 1 week, kid shows up, no jersey. Talk to the kid. What did I tell you about practice jerseys? They're required. Yep. Okay. Well, I had an extra one. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give you, I said, everybody's going to get a chance. But now next time, you're not going to practice. Okay. A couple weeks go by. Shows up again. No jersey. So then I'm like, okay, we've already had this talk. You know what the rule is. What's going on? And then he looked at me and he's like, I'm forgetful. I do this with every team I'm on. And that kind of caught my attention. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I forget my jersey, my practice jersey all the time. The coaches just let me practice. And I said, well, are the practice jerseys required on these other teams? And he said, well, yeah. So I said, you frequently forget your jersey, but they still let you practice? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, this isn't one of those teams. He did not forget his jersey again after that. You know?
And he didn't practice that night.
Yeah, right. And the only reason that he had not taken that accountability is because it had not been forced upon him.
Yeah, so he didn't see the reason he had to, because what you said wasn't really what I have to do.
Yeah. So self-supported ethos, it's extremely important. And when it's a standard that everybody's held to, I think it ends up lifting the community to a higher level.
How much more do you have in you?
Whatever you need.
Whatever I need. Mark, how much more do you have in you?
Keep it rolling.
Keep it rolling. All right. Here we go. All right. Train for life. That's another ethos statement from 906.
Yeah, that one's probably maybe a little less prevalent in the youth program. I mean, it's kind of out there. It was definitely more of a thing. It was a broader emphasis when this was pre-COVID, when we were doing the strength training in the off season, between seasons, normally in the winter, early spring. But the whole idea to that was, regardless of how old you are, I feel like training should be as regular a part of our daily life and activity as brushing your teeth is. If it's important to maintain oral health, why is it not important to maintain some level of physical strength and durability and resilience? And I'll tell you, when we were doing the training, I don't think we've done it since maybe 21 because of the growth of just everything. That's kind of slid off the map a little bit. But for somebody who doesn't strength train or has an adverse relationship with strength training, they're probably maybe not going to resonate with this, but the mental advantage that you get from learning your physical ability to lift heavy weight and move things and strength, to develop strength, that mental advantage over the rest of the population is enormous. It is an incredible, especially for kids. When we were doing this in the gym, it was incredible to see the sense of just the personal satisfaction they would get from seeing their strength and durability improve over 12 weeks. So I think that just purely from a standpoint of training for life, just to make Monday through Tuesday better, or Monday through Sunday better. You should not need to be on an athletic team. You should not need to view yourself as an athlete. I think if you're going to be a productive human in society, having that hunger and that drive to train yourself physically is a huge advantage. And it makes everything in your life better. I've mentioned that, for the past year, I really have not ridden much. There's a lot of reasons at play. We had what happened with Tara, the accident. I mean, that was a major shift that had to adjust everything that I've done since. And now we're trying to work back in a different direction. But also it's after 10 years of really consistent, hard, long riding, I started to realize that my training as I'm getting older has to be more dynamic and diversified. I I look at pictures from 2 years ago when I was riding 5 to 10,000 miles a year, and I'm like, who is that? My strength, my durability, overuse injuries, it would become problematic. So again, learning from somebody who's made mistakes and done dumb shit and has gone down the path and then been like, well, this path seems to be taking me in a place I don't want to go, and being willing to turn around and find a new path. The strength training for any person of any age, I think, is huge. It's big for kids from a developmental, physical, mental, just confidence perspective. And then for like us, as we're getting older, for you to continue to, live at an optimal high level physically, if you're not in the gym, if you're not working out, if you're not doing hard shit, lifting heavy shit, you're just not going to be having the best life you could have. And I think that having somebody there, an organization like us, in a respectful way, always sharing and reiterating that message is important. Because if nobody's saying it, there's a lot of people out there that are not going to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think about it a little bit more broadly when you say train for life, but not, yes, strength training, but also just the idea that you're starting your day with some training, with a schedule, right? Setting yourself up for success.
For sure. Yeah, because you got to schedule it in, right? If you're going to do it. I mean, when I was training on the bike, I had it hard programmed into my schedule when I would train. And though I am not training as much on the bike, I'm still training daily in the gym. And it's hard programmed in. It's going to happen. And I'm as busy as anybody else. But I do not let that go. Because that hour, for me, makes me better every other hour of the day.
Right. Agreed. How about you versus you?
That's the core of it. I mean, I think that, it's pretty straightforward. It's not me versus you. It's not me versus Mark. It's not Mark versus you. The crazy thing, like, I mentioned my life reality being changed in one moment by a decision one person made and the freedom that it gave me. If people could just understand, because we've seen this with 906, by not making it about the podium, by not doing it the way everybody else does, we have effectively taken what I'm going to say 90% of the population believes to be the recipe for success, being, I got to be on the podium in order for this to matter, for this to be meaningful. I need to be one of the fastest. I need to win. I need to win my age group. That's the majority of events. And by doing that, they limit the amount of success that can be had globally. Mm-hmm. Only because they've decided to. Only because we feel like we need to make this scarce so it means more, and then only a person can get it, or 3 or 5. We flipped the script. And what we've said is every experience matters. And there is a value and a success to be pulled from every experience within the event. So if you are the first person in and you are bringing home a Margie Gessick belt buckle and you're getting that dollar bill from Todd Poquette at the finish line, good for you. Congratulations. And if you're the last poor bastard across the line at 25 and a half hours at 8 o'clock Sunday morning, getting nothing from Todd Poquette but a handshake, good for you and congratulations. They both matter. Both ends. And sometimes you have to be able to stay out there. You should always stay out there for what it means to you, not for what it means to somebody else, not for what somebody else will think of you for having done it. Because those people who, like, if you go out and you win, the people who are going to value that and idolize you for that accomplishment, that's a different group of people than the group of people who's willing to wait for you at the finish line for 25 hours and who will support you and value you for having done that. Those are two different groups of people. And in my book, I mean, both are incredible accomplishments. But there is just something in the depth of that well to those people who stay out, knowing there's nobody at the finish line. We need more of that in the world. We've got way too much influencer type behavior out there. And, part of the reason it's there and will continue to proliferate until something changes is those people are the people businesses go to. Those people are the, businesses want sponsorship. And it's not because they care about you. It's not because that person is somebody we should aspire to be. They're throwing money at those people just because they want to sell a product. So it's just like the value system is fucked up. The amount of success that can be had is intentionally made scarce because there's a group of people out there choosing to do that to benefit themselves. Whereas we're saying, just like at Bike Club, crush or pull or roll Margie. And a group of people, kids or adults, regardless of ability, regardless of how long or slow, how fast or slow it takes them to do something, there is a success that can be found in that. Success is not it's not finite, it's infinite. And by having that mindset, you create more opportunities for success and for people to improve and get better every day because we've made the decision to do that. We've made the decision to make more success available.
All right, this is the last theme. Sort of two questions involved here. What does leadership look like? And what does leadership look like through 906? And then the second part of that is, what does it mean to put service before yourself? So you want to take the leadership first, or do you want to combine them?
They're both really combined. That came up this morning because before you showed up, Mark he's sitting there, and I sat down. Well, hang on a sec. Do we have? Is there any coffee left there?
You betcha.
I need a little coffee for this because this will be the last one, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
This is the last one.
Yeah.
Well, I might have just one more. We'll see.
Well, you can have whatever. You're running the show here. Thank you. Appreciate that. So when I came in, he looked at me. How did you say that? Do you remember exactly what you said? Because I had to ask him for clarification of what he meant.
I said, "What's your intention with that statement?" You wrote it on the board about a month ago, and I'd just been looking at it for a month and stewing over what it means to me. My life is 100% service based at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. What did I write on the whiteboard?
He's not kidding either.
You wrote service before self.
Yeah. So I wrote that on the board a month ago. You've probably seen it up there. And I just wrote it up there. I put a box around it. And then I walked away and I didn't say anything about it. Because I just wanted to hang there on the whiteboard, and I was waiting for somebody to ask a question about it. And then finally this morning he did. Well, clearly he's been thinking about it for a month. Yeah, it was excellent timing. So before I give my answer, I actually want to hear from you, Psalm. What's it mean to you? Like, you've spent a month thinking about it, probably more than I have.
Well, I see a lot of, and I hear a lot of, what's in it for me.
Yeah.
It surrounds a lot of what I see in the culture of, and a couple of things I mentioned this morning, a couple of things popped up in the last 24 hours. One of them being just a song that I'd heard, and the quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go on social media, usually every day of the week, admittedly. It's not for very long, but it's just generally to keep up with what's going on in the 906 world, because it pops up. But there's one particular individual that we have glaring differences in opinions. And the theme that I see is that it's a lot of take, a lot of take. And I just find more value in the giving part of it. And it's just been, that statement's just been resonating with me because of personally what I'm giving to the organization and to the community. And I'm not, this isn't not an ego-driven thing. It's just selflessly, I just feel better about myself giving than I do taking.
Yeah.
And when I saw that statement up there, no words said, and I just started thinking about it more and more, it seems like an ethos statement that belongs in our organization.
Yeah.
And it belongs in our community.
Yeah. I think the best part of that, when you talk about leadership, I think a lot of time that true leadership, I think, is action, and it's what you do. It's an embodiment of decisions you make daily and the outcomes that they produce. And when I put service before self up there, I put it up there because I've thought a lot about service before self for the last year and a half. I made a decision. Well, in 2014, I made a decision to try to start a nonprofit, and I didn't even really know what the hell we were going to do. Zosha from the Community Foundation and Amy Quinn would tell you that there's a lot of people out there that talk about starting nonprofits, and they never go anywhere. And they've told me that we're one of the few. I'm one of the few people that walked in that front door, said I was going to do something, that actually did it. So there was a point when in 2014 when I went to start it that it's like, I'm going to do this because I think there's a gap in the community and we need it. Wasn't doing it for me. And then if you've rolled the tape forward to like 17 or 18, I don't remember what year it was because it's all sort of a blur now. I got to a crossroads. There were two roads in front of me. I'm going to go buy Border Grill, which I had left Cisco to go work for Border Grill to eventually buy and own the business. Or I was going to walk away from that. And I was going to go all in on a nonprofit that I didn't even know could pay me. And I went down that route. I walked away from BG and I went down the road with 906. And I did it because I felt like we had created something that people were depending on. And if I walked away, I felt like it was over. And I could have justified it then. I could have justified it and said, listen, guys, it's been a good run. It's been 5 years, 4 years, whatever. But I got to take care of me and my family. But I didn't. And the best part is, all along the way, we're only talking about this because, you would wanted to get into kind of the weeds of this stuff and share this because people they do need to hear this. It's not something I regularly talk about because I'm not asking anybody to thank me. I'm doing what I feel more people should do, and that's putting service before themselves. So my point is, a couple times back in the day where I made this decision to put service before self. In my family, the first early adopters had to be my family. They had to be all in with me because every decision I was making was affecting them. And they did it. And they've done it every day for 11 years. Mm-hmm. And it's completely changed our life in a good way. And then somewhere along the line, other people started making that decision too, to serve others before themselves. You, Dave Kate, our board, 600 volunteer coaches, thousands of friends and family members that show up annually to support crew, not participate in the event, to support crew for their loved ones. Service before self. And I told Mark, so when he asked about it, what my intention is with it, I said, this statement, service before self, is if you strip everything away from 906 Adventure Team, all the branding, all the marketing, all the Facebook groups, all the chatter, all the hoopla, strip it away. What is it at its core that we do, that we are? And that is service before self. Everything we do is service driven. Service before self, I do believe that it is a mantra from one of the arms of the armed forces. I think the Air Force. I don't know if it's the American Air Force or if it's British. I've come across it before. And when I came across it, it resonated. I said earlier, I did not serve in the military, but a lot of that culture speaks to me. And so I end up reading a lot of literature on it. And just when I read that, it was like, that's literally how I'm trying to live my life. That's literally how the organization is attempting to show up every day. It's the whole reason we've been successful, because we have countless people that show up asking for nothing, only to give. That's what it is. And I mean, Mark said that he thinks that might be the ethos statement that Elizabeth has been looking for Gillespie Park. And actually, the more that I sit here and I think about it, to be honest, I think that really is it. Because even our decision to come in and purchase this property was another risk. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, we needed an office. It didn't have to be here, right? There's no doubt we needed an office. We were over at that co-working space, and we were eventually going to need our own place. But we rolled the dice when we bought this place, and we bought this place because when I heard about the hotel drama, and I'm like, I don't even know where that is. I'm going to take a drive down there, to see what the hoopla is all about. And the first time I pulled in here in November, it was like, this is it. This is it. This is, 2-acre green space sitting in the middle of the east side of Marquette. And all that everybody can think about is, how can I develop and make money off of it? We're going to buy this son of a bitch and just make it available to the public. Free to them. Build a park on it. That's service. It's putting other people first. That's what it's all about. That's leadership. It's putting others first. There's a great, I'm not going to get the reference completely accurate here, but Good to Great from Jim Collins' business book. There's also, I think, Great by Choice. But Good to Great, he talks about level 5 leaders. And essentially, a level 5 leader is one who doesn't sit and look in the mirror, but he sits, it's something to the effect, he's in his office and he points out the window at everybody is helping make it happen. That is always sort of that, you'd have to read it to get the full gist of what he was saying, but that whole book has, I've read it multiple times and it stuck with me. I mean, the first time I read it was probably in 2011. Good to Great, the whole premise is they studied this group of companies to determine what separated great companies from good companies. And this is why you've heard me talking lately about planning for the future, because I know that we are a data point in time for the adventure team, and that someday our time will have moved on, and there will have to be another board, and there'll have to be another director of adventure and partner in adventure. We're not here forever. But if we don't plan for them properly, we don't set them up for success. And what they found in that book was that the great companies could continue to be great long after their original founder or leader or CEO moved on, right? The good companies didn't. As soon as that leader moved on, their performance dropped and they weren't the same. And that can't happen for us.
And that is a great place to end this podcast.
It is.
I think.
It is. I think it is. This has been good.
There's other tangents, but we'll have to come back sometime and do those.
Yeah,
so
I
thank
mean,
you. Thanks for your time this morning. I think this was important, and a lot of those topics were worth sharing.
I appreciate you bringing it up because it was your idea. So thank you for that. I think that, are we in agreement? We're gonna put this out on Made Up for people to watch, and then we're also going to chop it up, and we're going to get this stuff incorporated into our LMS for next year, right?
That's
the
sounds
plan.
reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is important for people to hear this, and then beyond that, I'll end it on this. Like, if there's somebody who has watched this or listened to this through to the end, and they're feeling like, I need to get involved with this organization, just the fact that you sat on for 2 hours and 20 minutes and listened to all this indicates we probably want to talk to you.
Right.
We're always looking for people, whether it's at the board level or volunteer level, that can help take this organization to the next level, because we believe that it needs to be beyond Marquette, needs to be beyond Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio. And there's more people across the country that want to be connected to something like this. So if you're out there and you want to help us get there, game on. Let's do it. Out.